Hey everybody, it's Dina Rico with the Creativity Cave. I am so excited to join you for the second edition of From Simple to Stunning Sundays. I love this series and I think you guys do too. I had a great feedback from last week, pardon me, and I'm really excited to continue this week. So I've got 3 gorgeous cards. They started with this very simple card right here. And then we graduated to this one. And then finally we pulled out all the stops to create this one. So I can't wait to show them all to you. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I'm using the Climbing Roses bundle. This is a beautiful, beautiful stamp set. But what I really love about this set is the framelits that come with it. There's this really neat kind of lattice design. There's a beautiful label. There's some leaves and then this fun framelit. So I really like this one. Anyway, we're going to use those in conjunction to create our cards. So I'm going to start, and all of our cards have the same basic layout, which is a half a sheet of gray granite cardstock for our card base. And then I've got a Daffodil Delight panel and a label. So that's kind of the basic thing that's on all 3 of these cards, but we're going to change up how each of them is done. The other thing that I like about this is it's taking one of these outline image stamp sets and creating cards with it that don't necessarily require coloring. Obviously on my final stunning project I did watercolor this, but I want you to know that you can use these beautiful outline images, which we've got lots of them, but you don't necessarily have to color them in, because I know not everybody likes to color. I personally love it, but sometimes you just want a quick card and you don't want to color. So that's going to, I'm going to show you some of the tips on creating that, starting with this first one. So like I said, I'm using Gray Granite and Daffodil Delight, and then eventually I'll add a little Pear Pizzazz in. But these 2 colors are fantastic together. And what I also like about this is you could do these with a lot of different color schemes. Highland Heather would be beautiful. Coastal Cabana, Pool Party, one of those would be really pretty. Calypso Coral is gorgeous with this. Almost any of our colors pair so wonderfully with this Gray Granite neutral color. So I think that also lends itself to this being kind of a great card. Okay, so I'm going to start by stamping my sentiment in Gray Granite ink. Okay, so I'm just going to stamp that right on there like so. That looks great. And next, I'm going to take my little rose that's in this stamp set, and I do need to clean it because the last time I used it was with Gray Granite ink. But this time, I'm going to take some Daffodil Delight. I'm going to stamp off the first layer, and then I'm going to stamp one right there. Stamp off that layer and put another one down there. And that just kind of fills in my label a little bit. And I love this label and all these cute little dots. And by the way, they fall out really nicely with once you've die cut them. Next, I'm going to take my panel here and we'll grab this great big, beautiful floral image. And I'm just going to stamp this not once, but twice. And this is kind of a corner shaped image. So I'm going to stamp it up in this corner here. And I am going off the edge because I don't want it to line up perfectly. I want it to be off the edge a little bit with it. So there's one, and then we'll stamp it once again in the opposing corner. And then you can see they just kind of line up in the middle. There's a little bit of a gap, and that's okay because we're going to put the label right over that. So doesn't that look awesome? So here I've used this stamp, no coloring, but I've got beautiful color. All right, we're going to take and adhere this to our card base like so, and then we're just going to pop that label right on top, and that's it for this card. Really a simple project, and that is sometimes the best. I love simple cards, and they can really just be wonderful, especially if you need to stamp a bunch of them or you just want to get a bunch of cards ready to go. So I thought of you today. That's so nice. All right, next up, we're going to do a little stepped up version. So I'll show you my card sample, and then I'll guide you through everything that I did here. Now, I did kind of a fun little technique on this one. and that is going to use some glossy cardstock. I'm starting with that same gray granite card base. We'll fold that and set it aside. Well, actually, I'm going to stamp my flowers. Okay, so I wanted to decorate my card base just a little bit, so I'm going to take and stamp some gray granite flowers in the corner here, just a couple. And likewise, I'll do a few down here as well. And this is just to kind of fill in the space and just add a little design element so it's not quite as plain. All right, I'll set that one aside for just a moment. Then on my card here, I added some color to the background. And for that, I'm using my Stampin' Blends. I've got my Daffodil Delight combo and my Mango Melody combo pack. So for this, what I'm going to do is alternate mango and daffodil. So I'm starting with some light Daffodil Delight. Now I've got some glossy cardstock, and I think you're going to love this. So I'm just going to draw a line across here with my marker, and I'm going to go against it twice. Now what's really cool about this is on the glossy, you can kind of see that overlapping line, and it just creates a little darker effect. So I'll continue on and do all of these colors. And you can see I'm not doing anything special, but here you can see that overlap look. Okay, kind of neat. Now I've started with a piece of glossy cardstock that's a little bigger than what I need it to be. And the reason being, and you might have already picked up on it, is it's kind of leaving a funky thing on the ends here a little bit. And I'm going to cut that off so it's not visible. I'll do one more with my light color. And we'll just go back. Okay, so there are some fun stripes, but that glossy leaves that kind of those cool lines on there, so you can see those. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom of my label. This I did die cut out of Whisper White cardstock, and I probably could have done glossy, but I just, for whatever reason, I stuck with the Whisper White. Okay, so I'm just going to go over starting over the edge and kind of go over that once, twice. Now when I do it here, it does kind of blend so I don't see those lines, just as an FYI. And then I'll take my other marker and do one more line going across. And you can see these are not perfect by any means. In fact, I might even go one more line just to make it a little more straight across. Okay, now I'll stamp my sentiment once again in my gray granite right over the top. Okay, and I'm going to set that one aside. Next, I'm going to take and stamp my big rose on top. I got to clean it quick. I always use my Stampin' Chamois to clean everything. This works so nicely. Okay, now I'm going to ink this up in some gray granite ink, and I'm going to stamp on here the image. Now I will tell you one thing, when you're stamping on glossy, don't move it around. Glossy is a little bit slippery. You just want to go straight up and straight down. Okay, so I'm going to press on here and pull it straight up. Oh, perfect. Now the other thing I have to tell you about glossy cardstock is this is not dry. It is glossy, so that ink stays wet. We're going to heat it because I'm too lazy to wait. I will say when I was making my sample, this was not my first one. I had to do it again because I smeared the ink with my finger, and that made me kind of mad. But when I heat set it with my heat gun, it will dry the ink on that surface. I just want to make sure it's good and dry, so I'm going to turn this off. Take a look, making sure, sorry, I'm going beyond the camera just to make sure that this does look dry. You can kind of see that it's wet. The other thing you can do is take a pinky in a spot that you think might be wet and just pick it up, and if any ink gets on your pinky, then you'll know, but we're good. Okay, now I'm going to trim this down, and actually I wrote the dimensions. 2 3/4 by 3 3/4 glossy is what I want. And so like I said, I can trim just a little off the top and the bottom of this so that it is, or I should say each side. I think I have the top and bottom dimension correct already, but I just want to trim off that little dark spot on here, you know, that from those markers. Okay. Next, we're going to adhere these together like so onto a 2 7/8 by 3 7/8 inch panel of Daffodil Delight cardstock. Now, I will tell you, I made this a little bit smaller than my original panel, and the reason, you can see, it's just a little bit smaller, and the reason is because I wanted it to fit nicely with this lattice showing, so that's why I made it a little bit smaller. Okay, now let's finish up our card. First of all, we're going to adhere that lattice below, so I'm just going to attach it like this to my card because we're going to cover that up so it's all good. And then I will pop this layer right on top. And then I wanted to add one more thing to this. And I got out some of my gold metallic thread. And we're going to add a little gold metallic thread behind that label. My goodness. I really do need to get my nails done. Okay, so you can see that sticking out. So cute. All right, and then for our label, like I said, I'm going to use a little bit of gold metallic thread. I'm going to, wrap this around my fingers and wrap it around, 4 or 5 times. All right, I'll trim the end. And I'm going to put just a little adhesive behind my label. All right, and I also seem to drag my label on my ink pad, but luckily it was on the back side. Whew. Okay, so I'll spread that thread out just a touch, and then I'll kind of adhere it to the back like so. Okay, I'm going to pop that layer up just as we've been doing. The couple of dimensionals, 2 or 3. Part of what I'm doing is trying to cover up the adhesive that I stuck that metallic thread on and kind of sandwich it between. And the other part is just to get it to pop up. Okay, so there we go. Isn't that cute? I love it. All right, for our third and final stunning card, we're going to pull out a few of the stops on this one. Here's our sample, once again, just to show you. And this time I'm going to watercolor. Now, I've taken the time to stamp in Versamark and heat emboss my image on a scrap of watercolor paper. And then I'm going to take the stamp pad and squeeze the lid to my stamp pad. Open that back up. And then I've got my aqua painter and I'm going to color. I also have a little rag. This is a burp rag that I use whenever I watercolor to kind of clean my brush off. It just helps to do it in a rag versus on your background paper because it can get kind of messy. Okay, now what I'm going to start with is coloring in all these beautiful, beautiful roses. They're so, so pretty. I love them. And this is such an easy thing to color in. So I'm laying down kind of a layer of light Daffodil Delight ink. Now I've also taken a block, a clear block, and I've added a drip of my crushed curry yellow. This is a little bit darker yellow, and it's going to allow me to add some gorgeous highlights or shading into my watercolored area. And I think you will agree this adds a lot to the look of the image. to add those shaded areas. Isn't that beautiful? All right, so continue to do that. Now, if you have never watercolored, do not be intimidated. It's actually really pretty easy to watercolor. I even have a whole 6-week watercolor school course you can take. It's in my online store. It's got to scroll pretty far down. But in 6 weeks, I go through all sorts of watercoloring techniques for you, and there's a lot that you can learn about watercoloring with that. It's really fun. I do like it a lot. Okay, I'm just going to continue adding my darker crushed curry ink to add those beautiful highlights to this. Oops. I'll pick up our lighter Daffodil Delight, go over our beautiful rose here. And I will tell you that the areas I'm kind of going over are where there's some extra lines drawn into the image, so it's kind of easy to figure out where to add that extra color, which I love. Many times the stamped images kind of help you figure that out by where they've added extra lines. Oh, and I've got a couple of buds right here and here. Sometimes when I color, I do miss, especially on a kind of a busier image like this, I miss some spots, and I often will come back at the end and fill them in. Okay, now we need to do the greenery. And for this, I am taking my Pear Pizzazz, and I'll squeeze that lid together, open it up, and get some color added. I like having kind of a wet, lighter area, so I can just sort of go over all those little spots at the beginning. And if you go outside the lines, that's perfectly acceptable. Besides, this is watercoloring. It's your project. You can make it how you want. Then what I'll do is, once I've kind of filled these in, I'll come back in with some full strength. I've kind of watered this Pear Pizzazz down. I'll come back with some full strength and add a little detail to these leaves. Again, so pretty. And there's a lot of them in here, so just take your time. Okay, so I've kind of dried off my brush, and I'm going to pick up some darker color, and I'm just going to add that in. Again, I'm using the lines on my image, so there's sort of a vein drawn in, and that's where I'm going to put that darker color. Now, the key to watercoloring, by the way, is not the watercolors you use necessarily. It's not what kind of brush you use. It's not any of those things. But it is most definitely the paper you use. So if you're not using watercolor paper, you are probably not going to have great results. Watercolor paper is the key to watercoloring. Okay, that looks pretty good. You might have, like, I've got a little white space in here. That's okay. We're good. Now, I'm going to die cut this. And you might recall, we've got a framelit that's going to die cut this. The really important part on this one is to make sure you have it lined up well and that it stays in place when you die cut it, because you just went through all that work to watercolor it and you don't want to die cut it off. So what I'm going to do is take and adhere this with a Post-it note all lined up just the way I want it so that it doesn't move. So I'm just putting that Post-it right over the edge so it'll stay in place. I'm going to run this through my Big Shot. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I've die cut my piece of watercolored beautiness. There it is. Isn't that wonderful? I do love it. Okay, and what I want to do next is take and build up my card to this stunning, stunning card. So again, I started with my gray granite card base. I've taken and this time I embossed this cool lattice design into my piece of Daffodil Delight cardstock. I started playing around with like adding the lattice or changing up the lattice, but I didn't like the look. So I liked incorporating the design in my into my pop of color on here rather than the die itself. Now to emboss this, I used my embossing mats and just followed the directions to emboss with my Big Shot, and I think it looks wonderful. The other thing I'm going to do, and actually I wasn't supposed to adhere that yet, is I'm going to add some of my roses in the corners just like I did on the last card. This time I'm going to stamp them off though. I've kind of got a lot going on in my card, so I don't want it to be too overwhelming. So I'm just stamping off those layers to get a little bit lighter look. And you can see I'm managing okay even though I adhered my layer before I wanted to. Okay, so I've got just a little bit in the corners. Okay, next I've got my die cut piece. We're gonna pop that up right on here like so. It's just so beautiful. And I really like the way it looks with those yellows and a little bit of green and the gold embossing. So I think embossing is one of those things where, especially when you first start stamping, when you see it done, you just are amazed by it. It's kind of fun to come back to it every so often. Now, I find that as I've stamped longer, I'm a little bit lazier stamper and I don't emboss as much, but I really like the look of this. Okay, so there we've got that. Now I'm also going to stamp my little label I've got here. I'm going to add, there's this cute little design that comes in the stamp set. So I'm just going to add this on here stamped up off, kind of off in this, off to the side a little bit. So we've just, you see a little bit of it on there. And then I'm going to take my embossing buddy, which by the way, I did use to do my big floral image. I used my embossing buddy on that watercolor paper. But I put that all over here. And I'm going to stamp my sentiment and emboss in gold as well. So I cleaned this off. I'm going to use my Versamark pad, which I've had for almost a year now, and I've still managed to keep clean. It's like a stamping miracle. Stamp that sentiment on there. This looks a little bit crooked, but it'll be okay. And then actually, it looks kind of a lot crooked. Let's try it one more time on the back side. So we'll do our little design stamped off. That looks better. Okay. Now we're going to take some gold powder and emboss this. So I've got a little paper scoop that I use in here, and I'll just put that powder over the top and kind of flick off the excess. But you know what? I didn't put my embossing buddy on here, and you know what's happening is it's sticking to that image below. So let's see if I can find a little paintbrush. I've got a soft brush here, just kind of getting rid of the excess. That's all right. I think that'll work. Okay. Now we're going to heat that up quick. My heat gun from the bottom so I can see where I'm going. fun when that first melts. Oh, I love it. Okay, so there we go. I thought of you today in gold. So wonderful. Just like before, we'll add our gold metallic thread. And I'll just wrap this around my fingers. And you know what? I'm about out, so we're going to use the rest. Voila. Okay. I'll flip this over and add a little adhesive to the back. Kind of spread that out just a touch. See if we can kind of stick that down in there like so. That should work. Probably. Okay. Now to put this onto my card, I'm going to add a couple of dimensionals. So one I'm going to put on the left-hand side. I'm going to sort of tack down some of this right on there. That's going to sit on my embossed design. And then over here, I'm going to put not one, but I'm going to layer up a second dimensional because it's going to be even then with the already popped up embossed layer. So it's going to lay half and half. Does that make sense? Just like that. Okay, so that looks wonderful, but wait, there's more. My framelits have these pretty little leaves. There's two different leaf designs, and I have die cut them, one of each in Pear Pizzazz and Vellum. So I'm going to take and add both of these behind that label with some glue dots. And this is just one more extra step to make this kind of just a real stunning card. So you can see I've tucked one under there. Then I'm going to use the other one so I don't put both of the same exact leaves together. So I'll put the other design. I'm just kind of tucking it in like so because I want both to be visible. And then again, I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to tuck that right there. And then this one will go right under here. So beautiful. Isn't that just gorgeous? Okay, now last but not least, I'm going to finish this off with one final touch. And that is some champagne mist spritzin. Okay, I'm going to move my ink pads, but I'm going to just spritz this with a little bit of champagne mist. I'll do my sample too because I hadn't done that yet. And I've got just a little bit of shimmer over the whole thing. So there you have it, guys. That's my stunning card. Here's kind of my intermediate card. And once again, my simple card. So please let me know which one you like the best, 1, 2, or 3, in the comments on either my blog or my video. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I hope you've loved this. Now, if you need to purchase any of these supplies, I would really appreciate it if you shopped through my online store. I have a great VIP rewards program, and when you spend $50, not only does Stampin' Up! Give you a celebration choice for free, I will give you a tutorial bundle of 12, I think there's 12 fabulous, 12 fabulous projects that are just gorgeous for free, and it's in a PDF. It will inspire you for all kinds of projects. So thank you so much for stamping with me, guys. I can't wait to see you again next week. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Bye.